It's my great pleasure now to open our third conference on Let's Talk Overdose. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the land that I'm on today. The Addiction Concurrent Disorders Research Group, based at the University of British Columbia, is located on the lands of the Musqueam Nation. It is important for us to remember and recognize the role of the Musqueam people playing on our campus and for our campus. I would also like to explicitly thank our sponsors and partners. Like sponsors were Foundry in British Columbia, Coast Mental Health, BC Mental Health and Substance Use Services, BC Children's Hospital, and especially the Department of Adolescent Psychiatry. And we, without further ado, will start our opening sessions. By the way, my name is Michael Krausz. I'm the UBC Leadership Chair for Addiction Research and Professor of Psychiatry at the University of British Columbia. And it's my pleasure to introduce our Minister for Mental Health and Substance Use, Honorable Jennifer Whiteside, who has also long experience, 2 years experience in the educational and childcare domain. She will provide us with some opening remarks. Her background is in the Hospital Employee Union, where she fought for strong public health care and healthcare workers' rights. She's very dedicated in her career advocating for working people, which is very close to my heart too, Minister. I was shop steward too. And we can now open our conference with remarks. The floor is yours.
Great. And can folks hear okay? I'm not on mute. Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. It's really such a pleasure to have the opportunity to join you today from the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations in Victoria, British Columbia. My name is Jennifer Whiteside. I'm the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions in our government, and I'm the representative for New Westminster, which is on the, as you know, on the mainland and on the traditional territory of the Kakite First Nation. And it's an honor to join you today for the your third annual Let's Talk Overdose conference. And I really want to say that I'm very grateful to all of you for doing this work. We know that children and youth are disproportionately impacted by things that go on in the world, and in particular now, given the experience, the collective experience of the pandemic that we've been through, which also had particular impacts on children and youth, the kind of climate anxiety that I know many youth experience on a daily basis, the impacts of intergenerational trauma for Indigenous youth, the racism that many students experience in our school system and in our communities. All of those issues are very, very challenging and heavy for children and youth to deal with these days. And all of you are on the front lines of doing such critical work day in and day out to support children and children and youth. These are very challenging times, no question about it. And the opportunity to be able to gather in this way and internationally, to learn from each other, to share experiences, to learn about promising and best practices, and then to share those with politicians and governments so that we can figure out how to scale those up in our healthcare systems, in our social systems, so that we can do a better job of supporting children and youth. That is such an incredibly important task. You know, our job and our commitment is not only to ensure that our current health system is really, accessible, available, and working for people, but really to work on improving it. And that is the work that my ministry is primarily focused on. Since we formed government in 2017, I mean, our work has been this ministry. We stood up the first Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions in Canada. And over the 6 years that our ministry has been in existence, we have been working towards an integrated and seamless system of mental health and addictions care for people, and a system that didn't really exist at that time, but that really, I mean, as many of you know, the trajectory of and thinking about how we care for people with mental health challenges, and particularly with substance use, has changed quite significantly over the last few decades in particular. And it's so important that we pay particular attention to what is happening with children and youth. So we have a number of programs that I just wanted to reflect on for a moment that particularly provide space and care for children and youth. And you've mentioned you've talked about the Foundry a little bit, I think. And in our 10-year roadmap on mental health and substance use, a pathway to care, children and youth really are at the foundation of that, because we know how important early intervention is. And if I can just reflect for a moment on my time as Minister of Education, as Michael noted, I'm a newcomer to a relative newcomer to the political world. I spent most of my life advocating for workers, for healthcare workers in particular, and advocating for a public healthcare system. And so that's the lens that I really bring to all of the work that I do, as one of advocacy. And there was certainly is a lot to advocate for, and with children and youth in our education system during the pandemic. There was really everything put into very sharp relief in terms of the impacts of the social conditions that kids experience every day. And one of the most important lessons, I think, out of that time is a recognition that, that children and youth bring their, as we all do, they bring their whole selves with them. Whatever is happening for them at home or in their community, all of that shows up in the classroom. They're whole people, whole little people who are going to become whole big people. And we have to really engage with them on that basis. And that's why it's so important that we're building systems where we can intervene early and support children and youth as early as possible. So we've developed a system of integrated child and youth mental health teams that pull together school districts and our mental health divisions from the Ministry of Children and Family Development and our healthcare system to work together to provide wraparound supports to children and youth. And that is, and the point of that is really to provide a single source of, like a single entry point for kids to enter the system, so that they don't have to go and tell their story multiple times. And this is a similar sort of process with the Foundry. One door, and that door has to always be the right door. And behind that door, children and youth have to be able to connect to the care that they need and connect to the services that they need. So these programs really are about that integrated children and youth is about going to where kids are and reaching them where they are and engaging with them where they are to connect them to those care and supports. And the Foundry system is, which we are expanding and making considerable investments in and really building out, are really impressive. And I just want to give a shout out to everyone through Providence Healthcare and Vancouver Coastal Health and all of the health authorities and the frontline, the community partners as well, who operate those services in some communities. They are really an excellent example of integrated primary care. And I think often about the first Foundry that I visited, the Foundry in Richmond, which is operated by the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority, and how it felt to me like a community health clinic for children, for kids. And kids can access anything they need there, whether it's sexual health information, harm reduction, supplies, counseling services, peer advice. They can see a doctor if they need to see a doctor. And that is, it is so critical that the peer component of the Foundry has really been elevated to such an exceptional level. And all of the peers that I meet, whenever I have the honor of going and pleasure of going and meeting with Foundry staff and opening new foundries, is just exceptional. And that kind of peer work is critical everywhere. And the kind of community building that comes out of that experience is key, because what I've learned in this file over the last few months is just how critical community is. Community really does save lives in this space when we're talking about the toxic drug poisoning crisis. People taking care of each other and reaching out to each other is such a fundamental part of how we can provide good care. So it's also working very closely with our education system in terms of the mental health in schools program, which also seeks to ensure that we can intervene early and address issues before they grow into really big issues. I was really struck by my time in education and working with children and youth at that time, by just the amount of the heaviness of some of the responsibility that they have to, in the context of the world that we're living in, to try and build a good world, to try and sort of be youth, have the experience of being youth, but also the kind of world that they're inheriting. And I have been so incredibly moved by their dedication, their commitment to building strong community amongst themselves, to taking on issues of racism, to standing up for Indigenous youth, who we know are very disproportionately impacted from a health equity perspective by all of the conditions that they are living in. And this, of course, impact, we see this impact with respect to the toxic drug crisis as well. Indigenous people, Indigenous women in particularly, disproportionately impacted by the toxic drug crisis. And we know that, and you all will know the statistics better than I, but I think we do need to be concerned right now at this time about what is happening with youth as we come out of as we start to come out of the pandemic, which in some sense, it's sort of been a global existential crisis we've all been through. And we're seeing, I think, heightened anxiety. We're seeing some of the challenges of rebuilding community, rebuilding the connections that we lost, that were disrupted during the pandemic, and layering on top of that the situation just globally right now with and the uncertainty globally in terms of the war in the Ukraine, how supply chains have been disrupted, the ongoing impact of extreme weather, which many of our communities have experienced in very dramatic ways. Our world is changing very quickly, and the work that you are doing on the front lines to do your utmost to really support children and youth in this area where the situation gets quite extreme for them, and they are turning to substance use as a way to, in many cases, deal with that trauma. These are very, very important. This is really fundamental work. Some of the most important work I think that we're doing across our healthcare systems. So I'm very grateful to you. Looking very much forward to the learnings, to hearing back from your deliberations, to have what you're doing really feed into the work that we are doing to try and build out systems of care and connection for children and youth that will make a difference to them. We really need your expertise, your passion, your dedication to youth, to understand and ensure that we can build the best possible care and supports in our healthcare system for kids. So thank you very much. Have a really wonderful conference, and looking forward to hearing about your deliberations.
Thank you very much, Minister, taking the time this early in the morning. And let me introduce our second speaker this morning, who is Dr. Roberto Sassi, born and raised and spent the most significant part of his life in Sao Paulo in Brazil. and then moved to Canada. Dr. Sassi completed residency in Sao Paulo and in McLean Hospital, Harvard University, in both adult and child and adolescent psychiatry. And he will now offer his perspective as a chair of the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry in UBC and in BC Children's Hospital. Roberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michael. I'm start by saying that I'm calling with gratitude from the unceded, ancestral, traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and what is colonially known as Vancouver here in BC, Canada. And as Michael said, I'm a relative newcomer to BC. I came here about a year ago to have the psychiatry at both the BC Children's Hospital and BC Women's Hospital, and also the UBC division of the child psychiatry. I'm very thankful for the minister's presence and the remarks this morning here, the Honorable Jennifer Whiteside, and thankful to you, Michael, and the conference organizers for focusing this year's Let's Talk Overdose conference on vulnerable adolescents and young adults, and how to address the role of innovation in treatment and healthcare system development. This is a topic that is very close to my heart. And as you're going to see during the day today, there are multiple presentations, including several of the keynotes and the workshop ones that will focus on the complex issues that surround the care for young people who use addictive substances. So all the way from prevention and early intervention to opioid related overdoses. And as the day progresses and you hear those presentations, I would urge you to keep 4 facts in your mind. So the fact number 1 is that in BC, the death by illicit drug toxicity for young people 29 years old and younger, is the number 1 cause of death for this age range. This is more than the next 2 causes of death combined, which are suicide and accidents. These numbers have increased rapidly since 2016 and so far have not shown any sign of abating. This is an unprecedented crisis, requires a strong and urgent coordinated response from all of us. Fact number 2 to keep in mind is that there's still a limited range of accessible and appropriate substance use services for young people all over the world. We're making strides in BC, as the Honorable Jennifer Whiteside mentioned, but there's still much more that we can do. The service landscape can still be feel fragmented and sometimes difficult to navigate for young people, leaving them and their families in crisis and wondering what their options are. Racism and lack of culturally appropriate services are still big concerns voiced by First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and urban indigenous youth. And this is unacceptable. We need to do better. Fact number 3 to keep in mind is that among young people with severe and problematic substance use, over 80% of them have a concurrent mental health disorder. So a history of depression, suicide attempts, trauma, PTSD are very common. And the negative functional impact and disability are much higher in young people than are in older adults, for instance. The services that provide support for young people with the problematic substance use need to take this information into account. And for the factor that we have to keep in mind is that the young people who use opioids and other addictive substances, they want holistic integrated treatment, as been highlighted by the recent BCCSU youth report that came out last December. So the youth voices on that report stress that they do want pharmacotherapies like opioid agonist therapy or safer supply to be only one piece in a large treatment menu, but not the main intervention. They want to make sure that we focus on things such as mental health, housing, employment, income, social supports, and cultural supports. So with all those facts in mind, over the next few hours, you're going to hear from a variety of speakers including clinicians, researchers, advocates, politicians, people with lived experience, caregivers. And they will review and discuss a broad range of programs, interventions, experiences, both nationally and internationally, all with the goal of helping adolescents, young adults struggling with problematic substance use. And all those presentations make me cautiously optimistic about the future. We're facing a major crisis, no doubt about it. But and that requires, again, a strong and coordinated response from all levels of society. But I have been here in BC for a bit over a year, and I've been very positively impressed with the dedication, with the creativity, with the knowledge of all the healthcare workers that are on the front lines of this crisis here, and as well as the courage, the advocacy of young people and their families, and they can show us the way. So I hope that you can find the presentations today and the sharing of ideas helpful in your lives and in all the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberto. And these young people will now take over the opening. Where I'm happy to introduce Taliah and Zara Lyons, who hopefully show themselves for the last part of the opening. Good morning, Zara and Taliah. Happy to meet you. They are two of the inspiring youth Roberto just mentioned, and provide some opening remarks as a proud member of the Métis community in Ontario. They co-founded an organization called Youth for Youth Canada during the pandemic, and did several other things. It's so long to capture everything you do, so the floor is you for the next 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, am I able to share my screen?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I don't seem to. Okay,
Is it working for you now?
let me try again.
Yeah, things are exciting.
Okay, is it working?
Yes, looks great. You're still in presenter view, but once you enter, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, so hi everyone. We are two members from Talk Overdose, or YFY Canada. This is our 2-year update, I guess. So I'm Taliah. Zara, if you're speaking, I can't hear you.
Meet the team.
Is the issue on my end?
No, I also can't hear Zara if she is speaking. Zara, if you can hear us, maybe you can try leaving the call and rejoining, and then Taliah, if you're able to maybe continue on until then.
Okay. So yeah, Zara, I can't introduce yourself, I guess, but our other two members are Ayla Martin and Serena Lyons. Basically, this all began in May of 2021 when our youth coordinator told us about UBC's case competition, Let's Talk Overdose. We'd only about a week to prepare, but we managed to submit a video and came up with our own strategy on reducing stigma, and we ended up as one of the finalists. We didn't think we'd actually be here one day because we didn't win the competition. We just had an idea, really no plans, no like real project, just some quick research, and the video that we submitted. So yeah, in May 2021, we realized that we wanted to keep going with our project, even though we hadn't won. So we started putting together like all the research that we had and tried to find guest speakers, and we put out a few videos. And later in September, we were able to make social media and meet other people who had other organizations and start collaborating. By October, we started applying for grants and we started doing presentations in schools.
All right, I think you guys can hear me now, hopefully.
Yes.
All right, perfect. In February of 2022, we created our parent organization, Youth for Youth Canada, to manage our upcoming projects. And that spring, we started planning cultural workshops for the youth in the Ottawa area. That summer, we managed to launch 5 successful workshops. And in June 2022, we applied for grants to manage all of the things we had going on. We started social media accounts to promote our project and connect with other like-minded youth. And we also made an outreach brochure linking our project to the Ontario school curriculum to send to schools so they could book workshops as well as presentations.
So a few schools from Manitoba and organizations such as Starlings and even the OCDSB school board had reached out to us. So we started doing virtual presentations, and later on, as the pandemic allowed, we were able to do a few in-person presentations and a couple hybrid. So our original project was to start a series of interviews with guest speakers who had lived experience with opioids. So we started posting on our social media looking for other guest speakers or either people who had experience with somebody who used substances or someone who had firsthand experience. And we ended up having about 6 or 7 guest speakers by the end of 2022. So it was pretty successful, sorry.
Our most recent interview is with guest speaker Deborah Donner, and she tells Amelia's story, which is a heartbreaking story of a toddler who died of an opioid overdose, and it is told by her grandmother. This story is available on our YouTube channel if anyone would like to check that out. Research has shown that connection to culture has played a significant role in drug addiction treatment and preventing substance use. And since we live in a big urban city like Ottawa, many of the Indigenous youth here are far away from their communities. Sorry, I'm at school. Next slide, please. We started offering free workshops to the Indigenous youth in the Ottawa area. And since many Indigenous people have been impacted by residential schools, 60s, and Millennium Scoops, we often have higher levels of intergenerational trauma leading to addiction and substances. So to connect youth back to their culture, we would do cooking, beading, and dancing workshops.
So yeah, as she said, purpose of the workshops were to strengthen identity, promote wellness, and to connect people back to their culture so that they could find a sense of community, because we feel that sense of community was really, really important for youth. So here are some pictures of some of the workshops that we had over the summer of 2022. In the first picture, you can see youth are making chocolate. In the second one, we've got a Bannock workshop. In the third one, we have some beading. And in the last one, we had a actually really big turnout for that one. We taught people how to make fry bread.
Would you be so kind to come to the end because we are under time pressure a little bit?
Okay.
All right.
So yeah, basically we operate just based off of grants, and anything that the grants can't cover, we fundraise for our projects. So we sell homemade chocolate that we were taught to make by an Métis chocolatier actually here at Vézina. So yeah, these are just pictures of different events that we've sold chocolate at.
Yeah, just skip to, I think, awards or something. Yeah, we received an RBC Spirit of the Capital Award in the Take a Stand category to recognize our efforts. And then next slide, we also received a certificate from the Ottawa Native Friendship Center for our community involvement. You can go to the end because I think they're under a time crunch. Okay. We would like to connect with more Indigenous communities because they've been more affected by the opioids crisis. We'd also love for more youth to join our team. So if you are interested in what we're doing, we'd love to have you. We're hoping to collaborate with more organizations and build capacity and become more than just a grassroots organization.
So yeah, these are our social media links. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Zara and Kara. And I hope we will have opportunity to discuss your work more in detail.
Thank you for having us.
You're doing an excellent job. Thank you so much.